Hello, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm your host, Anthony Pastore. As we continue to think about the year ahead, today we're going to focus on healthcare and not only the opportunities that are out there for investors like yourselves, but also some of the medical advancements that may be coming in the new year. So today we're going to be talking to Eric Potiker, healthcare strategist with the Chief Investment Office here at UBS. Eric, good to see you. Happy holidays to you, my friend. And look, we're going to get into it right away here, Eric. Healthcare was the second best performing equity sector in 2022 so far. We've got about 2 weeks left to go, coming in just behind the energy sector. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts on what you think the catalysts are behind that particular performance. I think a lot of us can figure why energy did so well with prices where they were. So what about healthcare, and what do you expect to see as we go into 2023?
Hey, sure, Anthony. Thanks for having me. I think that much of the performance from healthcare was really macro-driven. So kudos to our strategy team for the upgrade of healthcare when they did it. I think as investors were looking to play defensive, healthcare screens as a cheap and attractive way to play defensively, and particularly compared to other defenses. So I think that was a big part of it, but it wasn't the only part of it. There were some healthcare-specific factors that I think drove performance. I think one of which was the resolution to drug pricing in the U.S. with the passage of drug pricing provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act. I think that clarified the landscape going forward for drug pricing, I think, for the next decade. And I think was overall, far less onerous than what we had seen proposed in prior legislation. And I think adds visibility, importantly, to the sector. So that's one factor. And then I think we also saw the emergence of some positive data in some really large therapeutic areas that I think also spark the growth part of the healthcare investor appetite, because you obviously have some investors who want the defensive, value-oriented part of healthcare, but then there's also a lot of growth. And I think we saw some clinical data that, again, reminded investors why healthcare is a growth sector. And I can elaborate on that as we go further into the conversation.
Yeah, for sure, Eric. I think that makes a lot of sense because, looking at that chart that we just had up on the screen a moment ago, our viewers can see that versus the MSCI All-Country World Index, healthcare beat by 11 percentage points. So clearly there was a lot of appetite there. So when you think about positioning within the healthcare sector, some of those individual pieces of that healthcare sector puzzle, how are you recommending investors position themselves for the year ahead there?
Yeah, and I think consistent with the macro comment I had about this year's performance, I think much of it will again be driven by where we are macro, and I think we still think defensive is the right way to position. Therefore, I think the sector is well positioned. It is still not expensive. It's less cheap than it was, but I think relative to the S&P, it trades more or less at par. I think within healthcare, this year we saw underperformance in the growthier parts of healthcare. i.e. life sciences tools companies and medical device companies, and the more value-oriented components of healthcare outperformed. So pharma in particular and managed care. I think we could see somewhat of a retracement of that in 23, particularly if we have a view that the Fed is going to be close to done in terms of raising interest rates, that the economy can start to regrow to the extent we slow and stall out. If there's growth in the second half, I think the growthier parts of healthcare could outperform the more defensive parts. So I still like the life sciences tools and medical device sectors. That's where we're most preferred, really because of the long-term growth dynamics. And while in 2022, those growth dynamics were not really rewarded, I think there will be better visibility and probably a better appetite, but that may not be right away in 2023. So yeah. I think that's something where there's a potential pivot coming within healthcare. And then, as I mentioned, within pharma, there are some very strong growth markets that are opening, particularly in obesity, where we're seeing really strong data from a couple of companies, and then others with products that are a little further away, but really point to potentially a very large end market. And that's an untapped end market for the most part. And then also in Alzheimer's, where we've seen one data set that's particularly encouraging, and I think will result in an improved product coming later in 2023, and others that are coming behind it. And those are, again, two areas of enormous unmet demand that I think will continue to keep at least some of the stocks in the pharmaceutical sector, viewed as growth stocks and as attractive places to be. I do think some of the value stocks, could see a bit of reversion to the mean from some of the performance, a really strong performance they've had this year.
You know, Eric, it's interesting. You talked about interest rates, and we're talking about the Fed quite a lot with the rates of inflation that we're seeing. But we had the Consumer Price Index print just recently, and it came in at 7.1%. So it seems like, and talking to David Lefkowitz, the head of equities for CIO, it seems like we have peaked perhaps here. And as you're talking about healthcare as kind of a growth play here, what are some of the headwinds maybe that you're seeing to this positive view of the sector? And there's also a lot going on in Washington, any legislation in the works that maybe put you on pause for a moment?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of Washington, no. I think Washington spent a lot of political capital trying to get drug pricing done and was able to get something done. I don't think there's a lot of appetite over the next 2 years to do anything significant on healthcare. There may be some rhetoric, but I think from a legislative policy standpoint, I don't think there's much. There will be the regulatory phase of implementing the drug pricing regulations, as well as the usual regulatory dynamics with healthcare. You could see certain actions that impact stocks or sectors, but I don't see anything significant, and I don't see anything that really should change investor sentiment towards healthcare, at least change it negatively. In terms of other dynamics, I mean, COVID has been a cross current for the industry. COVID waves are positive for certain parts of the industry and negative for others, and mainly have raised uncertainty for investors. We could see that reemerge. Hopeful that we don't, but there's really no way to tell that if we're done with the waves of COVID hitting especially in the cold weather months that we're in now. But I think investors have also become used to that, have been able to look through that. So I don't think it's going to have the impact on sentiment and on healthcare stock company performance that it's had for the last 2.5 years. So I think in that sense, it'll be less of a driver. And then beyond that, I think healthcare is really without any major overhangs right now, in part because of the legislative policy dynamics we discussed. And that often leads to a fairly strong environment for healthcare stocks if investors don't have to worry about major policy changes. And I think at least until the next election comes into focus, we're not going to be hearing much. So I don't see any major clouds on the near and medium term horizon for healthcare.
Terrific. Yeah, thanks, Eric. And I'm knocking on wood, as you say, about the COVID, kind of outbreaks as we're going into the winter months, and we're hopeful that perhaps people being boosted with the new versions of the boosters, which cover all forms of the variant of Omicron, et cetera. Hopefully, that'll keep the COVID outbreaks at bay. Plus, the antivirals are working wonders for so many people who are getting COVID, but not once they take up their symptoms are significantly less. So anybody who gets COVID, get that antiviral. I've had family members and friends do it, and it's a miracle. And speaking of miracles, I know you touched on this a little bit ago, but any other advancements or maybe some upcoming medical technologies, developments that you're looking at in 2023, things that you're potentially excited about? I know you mentioned some Alzheimer's treatments that are potentially on the horizon, things like that. Anything else there that's sort of on your radar there, Eric?
I mean, I think we're going to see more data sets on both Alzheimer's and obesity in the next 6 months, and I think that will further clarify the market opportunity and some of the competitive dynamics. And then we're going to continue to see some advancements in gene therapy. Some of the readouts from some of the later stage development products from companies will be hitting in the first half of the year. And I think that will be important for the broader theme of gene therapy, because we really only have, I think, 2 approved products. And there are a number that are being worked on and that have the potential to just open up that field even more and bring more investor confidence that that's an investable theme. And as I said, I think we'll be seeing some important data sets read out in the first half of the year.
Terrific. Eric, thanks so much. Some pretty exciting things coming up in the new year. Looking forward to catching up more with you on that. Eric Potiker from the CIO, our healthcare strategist. Eric, good to see you.
Good to see you, Anthony. Thanks. Have a good holiday.
You too, Eric. Happy holidays to you and your family. And for more information, a lot of this content can be found in our recent Year Ahead publication from the Chief Investment Office. The web address to find it is right there on your screen, ubs.com/year ahead, all one word, no spaces, _exclusive. And you can make sure to follow UBS on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and all of our past UBS Trending episodes, just like this one, are also available for you to view on demand. So if you missed any, you can go back and watch those as well on our website and on the UBS YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions about your own portfolio, make sure to speak with a financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. We hope you have a great day. Happy holidays, everybody. And remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. See you soon.